Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are you today?
I am well, Lake. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Excited this morning because we have one of our favorite itineraries to talk about.
Oh, it's so good.
It is so good. We are talking about Alaska.
I was literally thinking about this today, getting ready for the show. So is it my favorite cruises with the people that I've cruised with? Because that's amazing. Or is it my favorite cruise by the destination? I don't want to pick my favorite, but it's definitely among my favorite. And it's a cruise destination that we visited twice, 5 years and then 5 years later. And I think we want to keep that going where we go every 5 years, which is a luxury, but it's just so amazing that it's like, we need more Alaska in our life.
I mean, we're the same way. Our plan right now is 2027 to be heading back to Alaska, and I cannot wait to get back there. But you're right. It is hard to judge, friend cruises, other group cruises against things. But man, is Alaska beautiful.
It's the most beautiful.
And I truly think, too, for an adventurous sailing, especially if you're sailing or you're from the U.S., I think it's very accessible.
It is. The biggest issue is those flight times, because getting to Vancouver, especially if you're coming from the East Coast, is tricky, but it isn't Europe. So
right. There's no language barrier. I think regardless of what you want to do in these ports, there's a lot of options and ways to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think when you book like a European sailing, you can get a little bit bogged down in, we want to do this. How do we want to do this? Are we worried about this? And I think you can get a pretty streamlined experience from Alaska because everywhere you go, they've been doing it for so long and they know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Well, I would like to introduce our show. He has been on the podcast before, but it has been quite a while. We would like to welcome Steven to the show. Steven, how are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you begin by giving us a little bit of your Disney and cruising background?
For sure. Kind of same old stories. A lot of people went growing up, mom and dad, spring break trip every couple of years. My wife, same thing as she grew up with her family, went every couple of years. We got married, honeymoon in Disney, all that good stuff. Became DVC members, went a couple times a year. And 2019, she begged to go on a cruise. I had no desire. Water wasn't my thing. Boats weren't my thing. I finally succumbed. We went on the Disney Dream in 2019. About 2 hours after the sail away party, I looked at her. I said, I think this is the new form of vacation for us. So went on a few cruises pre-COVID. Obviously, shutdown happens. And we started going on as soon as we came out of COVID. Went on a bunch of the early sailings. Went on the Disney Wishes, I think third ever or fourth ever sailing, and have been going ever since. We're now platinum. The kids are almost gold. So yeah, we've done not a ton of different itineraries. Alaska is by far the best one we've ever done, but yeah, it's our preferred mode of vacation at this point.
Awesome. And we alluded to it just a little bit here, but what cruise did you book?
We booked the 7-night Disney Wonder up to Alaska out of Vancouver, stopping at Skagway, Juneau, Ketchikan, South Sawyer Glacier, and then a couple days at sea up and back.
Awesome. Well, why don't we go at the beginning? You need to get up to Vancouver for this sailing. How did you get up there? And did you do any pre-night stays up in that area?
We did. We're very fortunate. My kids like to travel with my parents. So when my dad found out we were going to Alaska, they took the kids to Hilton Head. They were leaving on Friday. So we left Friday, flew out to Vancouver, actually had a bunch of flight delays, didn't get into Vancouver until almost 11 o'clock Vancouver time, which from the East Coast is pretty late for us. Rented a car at the airport, drove up to our hotel, which was about 15 blocks from Canada Place. I wanted a car to be able to go explore over the weekend because the cruise didn't depart till Monday. So we woke up Saturday, went to Lynn Canyon Falls State Park. It's about 20 minutes north of where we were staying. Saw everything, walked, hiked, went to Granville Island that night, woke up Sunday, went to Stanley Park, explored Stanley Park for probably 4 or 5 hours. I went back to the hotel, then drove back to the airport, returned our car, and then took the SkyTrain from the airport up into Vancouver, up back into the city by Canada Place, kind of walked around, hung out the rest of the night because we had an early morning, and then woke up on Monday and got on the ship.
Of those pre-cruise activities, what would be like your highlight or like number one recommendation?
We went up to Lynn Canyon Park, and that had a mini suspension bridge, and we walked across that, and then there's just tons of little waterfalls and running creeks and streams, and it was pretty quiet. There weren't a whole lot of people there, so we just had time to walk around and kind of explore on our own. It wasn't super touristy. Stanley Park was much more touristy, but this was kind of more secluded and kind of off the beaten path, and you pretty much had to have a rental car to get there. People can get to Stanley Park without a rental car. We had a car, so we chose to go up there.
Did you mention where you stayed in Vancouver?
We stayed at a Holiday Inn. It was about 15 blocks from Canada Place, where the cruise starts, embarks from. I had done a ton of research. Obviously, Pan Pacific is the most ideal, but for what the price point was, and knowing that we were going to be there for a few nights, had a car, we had some more flexibility, and the parking fees weren't too outrageous either. So I travel quite a bit and stayed at a bunch of Holiday Inns, so we're comfortable with the brand, and I was comfortable with what it was going to be.
How did you get to the port then on your embarkation day?
Woke up, grabbed some breakfast, and got an Uber. It's kind of as we walked through the lobby to get breakfast, there was obviously a million people moving about. So we got a little nervous, got an Uber a little bit earlier than we probably needed to, and just took it over to Canada Place. Got there quite early, but porters are ready. And we gave them our bags and kind of walked around until, we had one of the earlier port arrival times. So it was kind of waited until they were all set up and ready to go. And the ship was she was just outside the terminal. So we walked outside and watched them unload things and load all the food for the week, and then kind of moved our way back into the terminal when it was time.
And what was your embarkation process like? Would this be your first time not going out of Port Canaveral?
Yeah, we'd been out of Miami once, and it was definitely different. This was our first time on one of the classic ships as well. So we were kind of just taking that all in, and Vancouver wasn't nearly as organized as probably Port Canaveral, but they did a good job and just kind of, herd you into your little boarding group as you sit there and wait to get on. But yeah, it was our first time not being in one of the main ports down in Florida.
Awesome. Well, what was it like then boarding the Disney Wonder for the first time?
It was surreal, obviously walking into an atrium that wasn't one of the quote unquote dream class ships. And we took it all in. This was, I said, 2 years ago. So it was during the 25th anniversary sailings. So all the characters were in their 25th anniversary outfits and, announce your name. And we literally just took it all in. This was a trip we've been planning for quite a few years, and just really, really that first day took our time and weren't rushing to go anywhere.
Highlighting on that planning aspect, I know you mentioned was an adults only sailing, and also I would argue probably your most adventurous sailing of all of your sailings. How did you find that the planning for the sailing differed planning it without your kids, or how would you plan it again with your kids in mind?
See, it's weird. We are not the most outdoorsy hiking, fishing, camping type family, like at all whatsoever. I'm not sure you could pay us to go sleep in a tent. So when you book an Alaska cruise, that's what a lot of the trip is, the hiking and all that. So for us, it was finding things that we got the Alaska experience, but we're still in our comfort zone. A 6-hour hike up through, the wilderness of somewhere we hadn't been before was probably not something we were going to do. So it just came down to finding the balance of getting the Alaska experience out of it, but making sure that it was something we wanted to do and we weren't forcing ourselves to do, if that makes sense.
Love it. Was there anything like super notable from your embarkation day that you wanted to highlight that you thought was different or unique?
No, we tend to do the sit down lunch when we get on board. We do the whole 2 lunch setup. We get on and we headed over to Tiana's. Obviously took all the pictures, saw everything in there. We were one of the first people in there. We then roamed the ship, saw everything we wanted to see, and then go up to Cabanas and kind of do second lunch once the major crowd dies down, and kind of go get the shrimp and crab legs and crab claws. And my wife kind of picks through the kids' buffet because that's all she's going to eat is macaroni and cheese and chicken fingers anyways. So we wait till Cabanas dies down.
That is amazing, Lake. I don't think we've ever heard of a 2 lunch, and I am here for it.
Yep.
I mean, are you really cruising if you're not on the Hobbit dining plan?
Right?
That's exactly right. And we're also going to find a way to go stop at the pool deck and eat at Daisy Delights and that kind of stuff too. We were very, I'll say, nervous or apprehensive isn't the right word, just unsure. We had never been on a classic ship. So we really wanted to check out the spaces. We had been on the Dream and Fantasy already. So we wanted to check out the Wish and wanted to check out the spaces and kind of get our comfort zone of what we like to do and all the adult spaces and that kind of stuff.
Well, we are going to focus just a little bit on the ship here for a few minutes before we get into these amazing ports. But before we venture throughout the Wonder, what stateroom did you book and what did you think of the accommodations compared to the other classes that you've been on now.
Yep, and here's also the next first for us is we had never booked an inside stateroom, but once you get on the classic ships, balcony prices, especially in Alaska, jump up to the point to where we were able to book an inside stateroom, and the amount of money we saved over even a guaranteed stateroom paid for the entire rest of our trip. I mean, it was like a $3,500 difference by the time you're done between an inside stateroom on deck 7 versus one of the balcony rooms. So we were a little, again, nervous, maybe the right word. We walked in the room and immediately loved it. Loved the bed layout, loved the way that the room was kind of laid out, tons of storage for just the two of us. Single bathroom obviously didn't bother us because we only had the two of us, so it wasn't a problem. So yeah, inside stateroom for us, and we don't spend much time in the stateroom. We're there to kind of, going to sleep, waking up, getting dressed, running back, getting changed and going back out. So we were a little, I was unsure, especially with Glacier Day and everything you see in Alaska. Again, we spend so much time out walking around that we don't feel we missed the balcony room at all.
And for people who don't know, you can at least see what is happening outside on the ship TV because they have the bow of the ship like live viewing for you.
Yep.
And so you can at least see what the weather is or what is in front of you. So at least you get a sense of what is going on. You're not in the total dark about everything.
I think that is the only channel we actually turned on at any point in time was literally grab the remote, see what it looks like, and then kind of had an idea to head out.
I'm going to bounce off that too and say, first off, any cabin that gets you on a cruise is better than the cabin that didn't get you on the cruise. And second of all, when I did my Alaska sailing, it was on Norwegian, and we did the splurge for an extended veranda. And it turned out our weather was so bad, and the way the veranda was set up, because it jutted out from the ship, it was so windy. It blew our furniture around all the time. So we couldn't use the furniture because we had it bundled in the corner. And then we just were never able to enjoy it. So it was absolutely like a lost cause for us.
Yeah, we're not coffee drinkers, so we weren't going to be the ones that grab coffee and sit on the balcony. My wife doesn't eat much breakfast. It wasn't going to be grab the room service and go sit out there. It just didn't make sense for us, especially if the cost is the exact same or, marginal. We'd go with the balcony, obviously, but for the difference on the sailing, we found it more than adequate for what we needed. And then obviously getting to Glacier Day, which I'm sure we'll get to, that was a small concern, but that didn't stop us one bit on that day.
Love it. Well, as I said, let's stick with going around the ship. First off, why don't we just talk about some of the spaces you enjoyed on the Wonder? Brand new ship to you, brand new ship to explore, which is one of the best things, is just walking around and seeing what it has to offer. What areas did you enjoy about the Wonder the most?
We loved Cadillac Lounge. We had we love live music, just sitting, grabbing a drink, grabbing a cocktail and sitting there and listening. We usually find one or two bartenders throughout the ship that we get to know early on and just tend to gravitate back to them. And so we were in Cadillac Lounge 7 nights. It was a point to where we would walk in and he would see us, and within 4 minutes, both drinks were sitting in front of us without having to order anything. He just knew it was kind of a head nod and sounds good. And then he would work his way around and he would spend 3, 4, 5 minutes chatting with us about the day and what he was up to, what ships he had been on, and all that good stuff. So we love Cadillac Lounge, the D Lounge, obviously, all the trivia stuff in there. And then Azure, we were in there quite a bit. We like playing bingo on the ship. It's kind of our thing. So we're in there, and then dueling pianos, we're in there, 3 or 4 nights throughout the week. So we tended to kind of gravitate towards down there. We're not being Alaska, we're not big pool people on the ship. It just tends to get so busy and crowded up there that we tend to stick to the indoor spaces more than anything, especially in the evenings.
Yeah, spaces like the Cadillac Lounge are like why the classic ships are so uniquely themed, because we will never again see a lounge that is themed after a brand of car on a Disney ship. But it's so interesting and charming and different from all of its other ships. Like even from the Magic to the Wonder.
Yep. We don't, and we liked some of the spaces on the Dream and the Fantasy, and we thought we'd like those until we got to Cadillac. I was like, nope, this is far better than what we had on those ships. They just seem to be laid out better. And so many of the other ships, it feels like some of the adult spaces are kind of the walkthroughs for everybody. So you're always having people kind of walk through. The classic ship, in Cadillac, it was literally, we went and sat in there and just next to one of the big portholes and just literally watched Alaska go by.
It really is a cozy space. It's inviting. Yeah, I really like it. I think spaces like that is what's missing to me, that adult space from the Magic. I mean, from the Triton class, the Wish, Treasure.
Yep. It feels like the Wish, and we haven't been on the Treasure yet. They're just chasing the IP and the names of Star Wars and even the Haunted Mansion and things like that. Whereas it felt like they were trying, on the classic ships, they want you to be comfortable in the space, and the theming kind of just fits.
Right.
Whereas
And
the Wish to us, I felt like they shoved the theming into it, and hopefully it fit.
and they're gorgeous. They're
Oh, for sure.
gorgeous spaces. It's just not the same.
I completely agree.
And I think there are spaces, not to take this tangent on too much longer, but like Rose, I think does a good job capturing that. Keg and Compass, while obviously I think we all love the Periscope pub theming a little bit more, I think Keg and Compass does a pretty good job of capturing that very like chill. This is a place you just want to hang out. It doesn't need to be IP in your face.
For sure.
But let's take it back to the wonderful wonder here. Let's talk about dining. What did you think of the rotational dining on board the Wonder?
We had an excellent dining crew. Our team was fantastic. Very engaging. Again, one of those, by night 2, drinks were sitting there by the time we got there. We don't need a very elaborate dining experience. So once they kind of got the hang of that, it was, bring our apps out, bring the, dinners out once apps are gone. And we're not big dessert people at dinner. So we were in and out pretty quick each night. But the theming in the restaurants were fantastic. The food was as good as it always is. My wife is a very picky eater. And, once they realized that, it was not, I don't say forced recommendations, but it was, hey, this is what we think you might like tonight. And they're spot on. We're one of the ones that pretty much know what we want before we walk in to each restaurant. And it was efficient. They were friendly. We had actually just had our assistant server was just transferred in from, I believe it was either the Dream or the Fantasy. So she had just flown across the country literally the day before embarkation day, had never been on a classic ship herself. So she was getting acclimated herself to everything else. So we actually talked to her about that nightly, kind of her transition. She'd never been to Alaska. And so it was what you would, what people talk about. The reason that Disney, in my opinion, separates itself with dining just from, the experience they provide on top of the food. But the theming was great. The shows were, Tiana's show was fantastic. And, we did not hit Palo for dinner. So we were there all 7 nights and had a really good experience. Lobster night was great. And food was always fresh, and we had early dining. So it was, never an issue with waiting for food or anything like that.
Did you do Palo brunch at all?
Yes, definitely.
How was that?
Palo brunch is obviously our go-to. Again, saying that picky eaters, we don't like a lot of fancier type foods, but brunch kind of gives us that elegant experience, but also we can get a waffle while we do it. And obviously the chicken parm and everything that goes with it. They made the grape and gorgonzola pizza for us, which we had never had. And that was the first time we'd had that. And the server was fantastic. And I actually will take it back. We did do Palo dinner on Glacier night after, because the server was so good. We did brunch on day 2, the first sea day. And the server was so good that we had popped back through Palo. I said, are there any openings? And 2 is, I believe his name was, I can't remember his name. Is he available? And he was available. So we had him, and it was probably the most boring food they'd served that night in Palo for a couple, but it was fantastic. The food was great. And again, the service was just incredible. And we watched as we were sailing out of the fjords from the glacier. And so the scenery was a little extra special that night than you would probably see on most days.
I think Palo, for a picky eater, if you have like a meat and potatoes type eater or even a pasta eater, like I think Palo is amazing for that, because their menu is so huge. Yes, you could do something unique, but you can also just get pasta. You could also just get a gorgeous filet. It's not complicated food, a lot of it, but it's so well done that, to me, that's what makes that restaurant so special.
Yep. And my wife got the filet, and I'll try a couple different things. But it was the service, it was the scenery, it was just the entire experience. I think that's what Palo is. And the food's obviously great, but it's the experience that goes along with it as well.
Absolutely. Where did you find yourself eating around the ship for your breakfasts and lunches?
We would do kind of quick run-throughs of cabanas for breakfast. Neither one of us are huge breakfast eaters, so it was kind of run through, grab a muffin, a Danish, a plate of eggs and sausage and bacon, and kind of walk with it as we eat. Lunches, it was around the pool deck. Days of Delights was huge. The the pizza place was good. And it was more just kind of eating to stay not hungry, more so than worry about where we were eating. It was kind of just easy selections. Grab a fruit bowl and wrap from Daisy Delights, and grab a burger and just kind of keep it moving.
Awesome. What activities were you able to take advantage of on board the ship?
A lot of the nighttime entertainment, watching some of the adult shows, which we hadn't done on other sailings. Watching Match Your Mate, Dueling Pianos were on there, so they performed 3 or 4 of the nights. Again, I was talking about bingo. I don't think we missed a bingo session on the cruise. And you get to know the bingo staff, and they make it such an experience in there as well. So we did that, and then a few of the trivias. We're not too strong in trivia players. We know the information, but not as well as some of these other people do. So we kind of go in there again for the experience to listen to the questions and grab a few cocktails as we play along with them. And yeah, it was just kind of, if we were at sea, it was sitting out on deck 4, which is probably my favorite spot on any Disney ship, maybe outside of the Triton class. Love the walking deck and grab one of the lounge chairs and just kind of sit there and watch it go by. This was being outside a little bit more than we probably would, just watching. We saw the amount of whales we saw from deck 4. I mean, it was probably on sail. As we were sailing away from Vancouver, there was a pod of probably 6 or 8 of them. So within the first 2 hours of leaving, we had seen 6 or 8 whales before we had left, and within 60, 70 yards of the ship. So it wasn't like, oh, I think that was a spot out there. No, literally, you could see the fins coming up out of the water, and they were humpbacks. And then we saw orcas. So it was literally
jealous.
It was incredible. And it was night 1, so it just started it off. And then it didn't stop. I don't think there was a day we were moving where we didn't see at least one pod of whales.
I want to note real quick, you said we're at, funny enough, 2 years today for when you sailed. So it was about July 17th.
Yep.
I just want to highlight that because the orcas can be, very hit or miss depending on what part of the season. So people love to know when they can go to have a chance to see orcas.
Yeah, orcas, I mean, we saw them on Glacier Day, actually, as we were sailing in and out and just cruising where the water was complete glass. There was a pod that those had to be within 25, 30 yards of the ship. It's one of those things where if you see 4 people run to the edge of the ship with a camera, you figure something's over there. So you kind of head that way. And we had gotten there pretty early, and they sailed along next to the ship for probably 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
Just kind of in and out of the water, fins in and out of the water. And it was just that point to where the water was so crystal clear and so literally just a sheet of glass. So we were very, very, we went back and counted. It was probably, we had pictures of 50 to 60 different whale sightings. I mean, we were very fortunate when it came to that, for sure.
Well, any other notes on the Wonder itself before we get into the beauty of Alaska?
No, we loved the intimacy of the ship, the smaller. We were a little worried about that. We were worried about some of the spaces, but we absolutely loved it.
There is so much to love about the Wonder, including this amazing itinerary. Let's go ahead and begin with Glacier Day. You got to do South Sawyer Glacier. Tell us about that.
We did. Started off in the morning. We knew we wanted to do the characters. We were going to wait in lines, just the 2 of us. So it wasn't a big deal. I had kind of done my research of how early you got to get up there. So we were number 2 in line for Mickey. I got up there probably an hour and 15 ahead of time. And there was one other lady up there, and we were kind of thinking we knew where to go. And a few crew members kind of pointed us in the right direction. And the way they did it, I'm not sure they were supposed to. It was kind of, if you're probably hanging out here, it's probably a good idea. And it wasn't just, hey, Mickey's going to be here. So we did that. And then by the time we jumped out of line, we circled back in for Minnie. And obviously the line had got long for Minnie on the other side of the ship. But we were able to see Mickey and Minnie within the first. It probably took us 90 minutes. It's exactly it. And it was early in the cruise, so everybody's still in a good mood. Nobody's tired and cranky yet by the end of the week. And you're sailing through, just what you're sailing through, the mountains. And so you don't feel like you're standing there for an hour and a half. If you're sailing through the Bahamas or the Caribbean and it's 102 degrees outside, even if you're moving, you're not going to want to stand out there. But it was starting to get cooler. We were getting closer and closer to the glacier. So it was starting to get, a little chilly, but you didn't mind. And so we were able to hit Mickey and Minnie right away, and then grabbed a bite to eat, refreshed, and then saw Donald and Daisy. And it started to rain a little bit, so they put them on the kind of that under covers over down on the pool deck. And the rain had kind of probably made those lines a little bit shorter. So we went from, I think it was Donald, and then jumped over to Daisy right away. So we'd seen all 4, and I don't think it was past 12:30. And so we had done everything we wanted to do there, and then we went and secured a spot on deck 4.
And what was it like seeing the glaciers for the first time? Or maybe what was your expectation of it, and did it meet that expectation? It did.
I'd been tracking the sailings in front of us, and a couple of the sailings before us hadn't gotten super close. There were some, icebergs to where it prevented the Wonder from getting all the way back into the super close. And for us, we got so close to it. And it wasn't just the glacier. It was sailing in through that, the naturalist on board, kind of explaining what we're seeing, and just, 20 to 25 separate little waterfalls coming down out of the mountains. And then we got to the glacier, and it was incredible. They sat there and they spun both ways. So if you were on your balcony, you could see it. So we stayed we would have been on the starboard side first. And once they turned, we literally just walked through deck 4 onto the other side, and then saw it as we spun back around that way. There couldn't have been more than 50 people on deck 4 on both sides. Everybody was up top.
That was
And
my
we saw
question. So that's
we
great.
saw everything we wanted to see. You weren't standing on top of people. Everybody was taking pictures. We took a picture of family. They would take a picture of us. So the glaciers in the background, and it was awesome. It was by far probably our favorite day of the cruise, just because how gorgeous it was and how close we got and how vibrant it was. And by the time we got in there, the sun was out, wasn't a cloud in the sky. So the way the sun hit the glaciers made it even brighter.
Love it. Any other notes from Glacier Day before we finally set foot on land?
No, we loved it.
Well, then let's get into your first real port stop. You are in Skagway. What did you get up to in Skagway?
So Skagway, we were one of the first ones off the ship in the town where nobody was there, and kind of walked around early. We knew we wanted to get up into the Yukon and see Emerald Lake, and we looked into the train that goes up. We'd watched some videos of people being on it, and it just looked like it was a little too prohibitive for us. And again, I like to plan things out. We like to do things at our own pace. So I found an electric car company. They do the electric bike rentals in Skagway, and the owners of the company bought 2 electric Mustangs, and they rent them out for the day. And so you go pick it up. I think we picked it up at 8:30 in the morning. Labs provide you a full charge, gives you 175 miles, which is more than enough to do what we needed to do. They provide essentially a binder with places to stop and take pictures. And we thought we were going to have to really use that, but you don't need to. So we got in the car and got acclimated with the way the car worked, being electric's first time I had driven one, and just started driving north. And we stopped at probably 10 to 12 different little pull-offs and just took pictures with everything in the background. Just random lakes and mountains, and it was gorgeous. Again, not a cloud in the sky for us. Made our way up to Carcross Desert, stopped there, and then made our way to Emerald Lake. Hit a little town once we got up into there, walked around, saw some totem poles and some little unique shops, and then made our way back down and stopped probably even more spots. As we were driving up, my wife kind of had the phone out the window taking some videos, and I thought I saw something dart next to the car. And once we got up to Carcross Desert, we pulled out our phone and went frame by frame, and a mama and bear cub had run right by our car. And it was so fast. We're driving 50 miles an hour on this road that we were on, and the bears are running the opposite direction. So we have it freeze framed where you can see the bears, and they're looking directly into the car. I mean, they couldn't have been more than 10 feet from us. So that was our only bear sighting of the week. But saw that. But no, that trip let us go at our own pace. We were able to stay where we wanted to as long. If we got somewhere and it wasn't great, we would get right back in the car and keep going. So we found something else we liked better. And up and back, we were back into town by about 1 o'clock. And had the rest of the afternoon to explore Skagway on our own. Went and grabbed lunch at the brewing company that's right there. Kind of talked to the servers and just got their story on how long they had been there. And the person we had comes in just for the cruise season, and their experience in Skagway, and hit some of the shops, got some snacks and a few small trinkets, souvenir type stuff. We were back on the ship. We got off and walked across. There's a little bridge kind of through the port, and there's a little walking trail that you can go walking through. And there's a lookout point that the ship is sitting right in front of you. And we'd taken our Mickey and Minnie plushes, and we'd seen somebody else take that walking path and took some pictures there and sent it back to the kids. But again, not huge hikers. I think it took us a matter of 15 or 20 minutes. Kind of walk through there. That was our version of nature. Another vantage point of the ship. And as we were walking there were 4 to 6 seals kind of floating through the little inlet, and sit there and we sat there and took pictures of them for probably a half hour, because they were playing and splashing, and it was everything that you had seen, and everything you were hoping to see, we got to see. And then back on the ship and rested up and had dinner that night. And Skagway was incredible. Everything we were hoping for, and probably our favorite port of the week, to be honest. Yeah,
there is no shortage of amazing things to do in Skagway, but this is definitely a first, and honestly sounds really amazing. Was not on my radar, but I love that. Do you by chance remember who you booked that through, or what the company was?
Yeah, it's the electric bike company in Skagway. And they I looked it up this morning to make sure they're still there. And I think it's now Klondike car rental or something like that, but it's through this bike shop. And there was a 5-minute walk from the ship, but it's a Skagway electric bike rental. And I actually think they're up to 3 Mustangs now, because they're sold out for the entire season. I think I booked ours in January for that July trip, and the other one had already been rented out. And by the time we got there, they were sitting there. They looked like they're brand new, but they're the owners of the company. It's their personal cars. They bought them and rent them out. It was actually, I think it was might have been $40 or $50 more than it would have been for us to take the train. So we spent an extra $40, and then we were able to kind of see the same things. We actually drove along the train tracks that the train goes up and back. And, the train, we talked to people that night on the ship that took the train, and they liked it. they wish they could have spent more time doing certain things, and it's what we were able to do. So it takes a little bit more on your own. There's a little more responsibility. You're not just gonna go sit there and watch. I had to drive. My wife got to watch more, but it was by something I'm really, really glad we did.
I love that. Well, let's move into your next day, Juneau. What did you have planned this day?
Very similar. We knew we wanted to go over to Mendenhall, and actually we wanted to go see the Shrine of St. Therese, which I had seen somebody else do, and again, in a cruise vlog we had watched. Trying to figure out how to do it. There wasn't the most optimal car rental place to get to for us. I looked into several different places, and then somebody recommended Turo, where people rent their own cars out. So I looked into that, was a little apprehensive, never using it before, but it worked out great. I think it was $125 for the day. And the way it works is they rent out their private cars. They pulled it into a shopping plaza right outside where we got off the ship. You had to take a little bus ride into the city in a matter of a few minutes. And where they dropped us off, the car was sitting right there. Process was super easy. Keys were in it. They dropped it off, 10 minutes before we got there. We got in, you take pictures of the car to make sure the car is in good shape and everything. We drove over to Mendenhall and got there quite early before all the big tour buses get there and charter buses. Mendenhall was fantastic. The best part was walking to Nugget Falls. I took a little 20-minute walk there. And again, by the time we got there, there might have been 25, 30 people. And it was your true Alaska weather. It was misting. It was a little rainy. It was probably 55 degrees, but got up as close as you can get to Mendenhall Glacier. But Nugget Falls was awesome. We kind of climbed on the rocks, took some pictures, got a little silly with that stuff. And actually, as we were there, somebody got engaged directly behind us. We watched the proposal go down. I kind of had feeling something was going on. They had their family there, and the guy kind of got almost into the water and proposed. So we watched that and actually took some pictures for them. We walked around there, had a blast, walked back, got back in the car, and then drove over to the Shrine at St. Therese, which is just the most serene place we had been the entire trip. Super quiet, very scenic. There's actually a little stream that kind of runs through it. And the salmon were just starting to kind of start swimming upstream. So we got to see a bunch of the salmon. And then the highlight of that for us is there was actually 2 bald eagles that were hunting, essentially. We saw them kind of perched up and watch them fly in, grab some salmon, and then go watch them just eat for 15, 20 minutes. And the amount of pictures we took, we were there for probably an hour and a half, and just sat there and took it all in. Again, trip we've been planning forever. I'm not sure we talked a whole lot. It was just kind of sit there and reflect on what we were doing, what we were able to do, and just the beauty of what Alaska is. After that, drove back into the city, returned the car. Again, probably by 1:30. I went and found a bite to eat at a local spot and walked around some of the shops, and then made our way back to the ship probably by 3:30, 4 o'clock. Again, it was nothing fancy, nothing they're going to write brochures on, but for us, it was exactly what we wanted out of it. It was the scenery. It was just us. We weren't kind of in large groups of people and able to go at our own pace.
What was the Shrine of St. Therese? We've just never talked about that before.
It's hard to explain. They've got a small church there, and it's scenery is the best way to put it. They've got some, and I'm definitely not doing the best way to explain it. They've got little, I don't say temples, but little church spaces you can go and, people go and worship, people that, on the religious side of things. And, for us, it was more, we'd seen the videos of it, and it was more the scenery piece of it. We didn't get into the background of, why it was there and the history of it as much. It was kind of somewhere we wanted to go and see the nature, see the mountains that sit through the water. And it was just, we were one of probably 6 or 8 cars there. So again, it was just super quiet and something we wanted to take in the scenery without having to do the big group trips.
Love it. Well, we have one more port stop, the kitschiest of all places in Alaska, but we love it oh so much, Ketchikan. What did you get up to here?
We had a true Ketchikan day. It rained from the time we pulled into port, and I don't think it stopped raining until we, pulled out of port. We had nothing planned. We knew we wanted to get out and walk through the city. We walked up to Creek Street and got soaked. I mean, we had all our rain gear, everything knew we needed to have, but it rained pretty hard that day. Walked through Creek Street, walked through the shops, walked in to eat at a local spot we had found. We didn't have anything planned. It was, let's go see what we can find. We'd seen all the touristy places that people eat at Ketchikan, but for us, we wanted to just kind of see what we found. So hit a bunch of the shops, knowing it was our last stop. We hadn't bought a ton of souvenirs for the kids at home. So we walked through, and I walked through one tourist shop. You walk through all of them. All the souvenirs are pretty much the same, but bought the sweatshirts we wanted to buy, bought the magnets, the little totem pole magnets, things like that. And then just experienced what Ketchikan is. We didn't do the lumberjack show. We kind of walked outside of that and saw we lined up for that. And actually the people that we were sitting with that night at Keys tried to see the Disney lumberjack show. And it had rained so much they ended up not even having Goofy come out because the rain was that hard. So we didn't feel like we worried we were going to miss that, but obviously we didn't miss that. But yeah, we walked down to where one of the royal ships were docked at the other dock. It was Ovation of the Seas, and walked down, kind of saw that. But it was just a real kind of quiet day. It kind of set in that the trip was almost over. So just wanted to experience as much as we could, but also not get completely soaked. So yeah, the weather wasn't fantastic, but that's what Ketchikan is. It's a rainy city in the States for a reason. So it was definitely our most laid back port, one that I think if there's an itinerary that went somewhere other than Ketchikan, we'd probably veer towards that for us because we felt like we did what we wanted to there. Or that might be a place we would find a group excursion going forward, something else we wanted to go see. But it was still gorgeous, still beautiful. So everything that we wanted to see.
Well, that actually brings me into my next question. We talked a lot before the show about wanting to go back to Alaska, as many of us do, because you just cannot get enough. In any of these ports, are there any other excursions or activities that would be on your highlight if you were to go back?
I guess it would probably depend on the time of year. For us, we wanted to see whales. And we had looked really, really hard into some whale excursions, even when we were in Vancouver. So I'd heard, if you're there early, do the whale excursions at Vancouver. But for us, if we're going the same time of year, I'm not sure there would be. If we went to Skagway, we would do the exact same thing. We would get in the car and drive back up, rent the car on our own. Juneau, I'm not sure we would do the Shrine of St. Therese again. Might do one of the canoeing trips over to Mendenhall Glacier. We'd stick in that area for sure, but we're not big fishers, so we're not going to do a fishing expedition or anything like that. So I'm not sure we would do things a ton different. And if we take the kids with us who weren't there the first time, obviously, I'd probably do a lot of the same things because everything we saw, I want them to see. So yeah, for us, it's more about being there than what we're doing. And as long as we were able to see whales, I think it was my wife's big thing was make sure we saw whales. So if we're there at the same time of year, hopefully we have the same luck. Maybe a whale excursion in Vancouver. But other than that, I'm not sure we would do anything a ton different. We looked into the helicopters, but I'm just not sure that's something we would have to do. And the cost is so high on those, especially the family of 5. If we go back up there, I think it would just limit us on what we could do the rest of the trip. So I think, if somebody's paying for it and dollars aren't a concern, probably a helicopter up to one of the glaciers. But for us, what we did was perfect for us.
Love it. Well, sadly, as all cruises do, this one must come to an end. How was your disembarkation process? And did you do anything post-stay in Vancouver or that area?
Yeah, disembarkation was super easy. We didn't have a flight out until 11 o'clock that night. We had a red eye back, which was just awesome. So we knew we had all day, had some rental car points saved up. So we actually took a taxi down to the airport, 9 o'clock in the morning, grabbed a rental car, and it did not stop raining the entire day in Vancouver. Our plan was to head over to Stanley Park again, kind of see some of the things we had already done, but you couldn't get out of the car for more than 5 minutes. So we kind of drove around Vancouver, found a good spot to eat dinner, actually drove back over and watched the Wonder sail away from Canada Place, from Stanley Park, found a spot to kind of watch her sail out, and then just made our way back to the airport. Got there super early because, again, you couldn't do anything. It was a monsoon for 12 straight hours. So we felt we were super fortunate because our sail away day a week before was gorgeous. The people that sailed away that day couldn't be outside for a sail away party or sail under the bridge. And so yeah, we didn't do anything super fancy, and then just flew back this way, flew back out east, and got home at 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday.
Well, Steven, I've got just a couple more questions before we bring it out here. First off, did you have any other notable cast interactions you wanted to highlight from this sailing?
No, for us, it was our dining team. It was funny. We had met a bartender on a cruise on the Dream named Gusti, and we'd actually gotten in contact with him. So we'd gone back on the Dream, and he had given my wife his contact information, and we actually brought him some supplies that he had needed on the Dream. And our server's name was Gusti, and from Indonesia, same place. And we just, do you know him? And they did. They'd known each other. So we had talked about him, and we actually mexaged, the original, crew member from the ship, and they had known each other. And then the bartender at Cadillac was fantastic. I mean, he made it extra special. Things he had seen on his Alaskan sailings, told us what to check out in the different ports. But no, it was the bingo staff, I guess is the best way, the crew staff. They were so good on the sailing, all the different animation classes and the bingos and the trivias. They just took their time. And I think it was, on a 7-night sailing like that, they don't have to rush through like a 3 and a 4 night that they do. So they'd seen the same people at their things. So they have conversations. They feel like you get to know them rather than they're there just to get through a 45-minute trivia. They take their time to get through it. And it was such a relaxing cruise, on port intensive, obviously, but we didn't leave there feeling like we had ran all day for 7 straight days. It was a very, very good balance for us.
Love it. Did you utilize the photo package at all?
We did. Yeah, for this cruise we did and brought home obviously 250 from around the ship, just with different characters and things on deck with Mickey and with all the characters in their Alaska outfits. And we've done it for 1 or 2 sailings with the kids. This is only one we've done, just her and I with the picture package. We figured this one was probably going to be worth it. And we brought home, I don't know, 1,500 pictures between what we took, what they took, and the videos and all that stuff. So it was actually fun to kind of go down memory lane and look back, preparing for this at things we did. And I guess that was the other thing with the characters being on the ship for 7 days and us mostly doing 3 and 4 and 5 nights. People had seen the characters, so the characters were able to take more time with you. Each guest, especially later in the week, 'cause the lines weren't nearly as long. So it just had that Disney touch to it that you don't find. I think, we've taken a few other sailings and other cruise lines now, and it has that touch that Disney has that I don't think we find other places.
Well, Stephen, what is next for you and your family?
We are actually jumping on Utopia of the Seas. They took advantage of their kids sail free, taking our 2 younger ones. My daughter's going into high school and said she didn't want to miss a week of school. So we're taking just the boys and going to jump on Utopia, check that out. Next Disney is probably going to be next summer. Kind of looking at a few different itineraries. The Destiny looks incredible to us. We like the theming of it. So might try to jump on that end of next summer before the kids go back to school.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your sailing through Alaska.
And I appreciate you guys having us and everything you guys do provide. So not only entertainment, but so much good information for people that are taking their first or their 20th cruise. So appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, Christy, where can our listeners follow you?
You can find me all over the internet at Pack Your Pixie Dust. And if you'd like to work with me in the future, Lake has created a Work with Christy link, and you can find it in the show notes or on our website at dclpodcast.com. Lake, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at MouseGen, and you can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at DCL Podcast. And of course, find all of our information on dclpodcast.com. But that is going to do it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Well, that's going to wrap up the show. Once again, we want to thank Stephen for coming on and sharing him and his wife's adventure on the Disney Wonder to Alaska. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to thank our Patreons who help make this show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/DCLpodcast. Whether you're boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Christy, and Steve, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. We'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.